From the moment the first blurry photo hit private fan group chats, everyone knew 2026 was about to be a different kind of year for FAYEYOKO. It wasn't a clear shot. It wasn't confirmed by any media outlet. It was just a quiet detail that didn't belong in public yet. A thin ring, worn on a finger fans had watched for years. No announcement, no caption, just presence. And sometimes, presence speaks louder than words. At first, people tried to dismiss it. Styling choice, costume jewelry, a brand sample. But the timing didn't sit right. Faye had been unusually careful in recent appearances, hands often tucked away, angles carefully chosen. Yoko, on the other hand, seemed calmer than ever, almost unbothered by the sudden rise in speculation. The contrast only fueled curiosity. Fans had seen chaos before. This felt different. This felt intentional. Within days, the conversation shifted from whether the ring was real to what it meant. The phrase "Val ring" started circulating quietly, not from tabloids, but from longtime supporters who knew the history, the patterns, the silences. People began revisiting old interviews, old statements about timing, privacy, and promises made away from cameras. Suddenly, moments that once felt casual were being reinterpreted with new weight. And just as the speculation reached its peak, the other shoe dropped. Faye's company filings surfaced. No teaser, no dramatic press conference, just documents, clean, official, undeniable. Fabulous Entertainment was preparing for an IPO. The shock wasn't that Faye was expanding. Fans had watched her build steadily for years, choosing control over speed, ownership over convenience. The shock was the timing. A personal symbol quietly revealed on one side, and a massive financial move announced on the other. Love and leverage unfolding at the same time. It felt deliberate, balanced, almost poetic. Industry insiders were quick to react. Some praised the strategy, calling it a masterclass in separation, private life guarded, professional life accelerated. Others questioned whether the emotional weight of the moment would overshadow the business. But Faye didn't comment. Neither did Yoko. And that silence became the loudest statement of all. Behind the scenes, Fabulous Entertainment wasn't just preparing numbers. It was positioning itself as a new kind of player. Not just talent management, but production, creative development, global partnerships. Faye wasn't stepping into the market as a celebrity testing her luck. She was entering as an architect, someone who had learned the system from the inside and decided to redesign it. Meanwhile, Yoko's schedule shifted subtly. Fewer public appearances, more closed-door meetings. No announcements, no denials. Just movement. People close to the production scene whispered about scripts being reviewed, international collaborations being considered, and a clear desire to choose depth over noise in 2026. Fans began to notice a pattern. Faye was building outward. Yoko was building inward. And somewhere in the middle was that ring, never confirmed, never denied, but never removed. As the stock market buzz grew louder, something unexpected happened. Instead of pulling focus away from the personal rumor, the IPO seemed to stabilize it. The narrative shifted from scandal to strategy, from exposure to evolution. This wasn't a secret being chased. It was a boundary being set. Analysts pointed out that the IPO documents made no mention of personal branding tied to relationships. That alone spoke volumes. Fabulous Entertainment wasn't selling a story. It was selling a structure. And in doing so, Faye proved she could exist beyond headlines, even while controlling them. The fan base, surprisingly, followed suit. Discussions became more measured. Less frenzy, more reflection. People weren't asking, "Are they?" anymore. They were asking, how did they do this so quietly, and what does this mean long-term? By mid-year, it became clear that 2026 wasn't exploding because of chaos. It was exploding because of alignment. Two people choosing privacy at the same moment one of them chose full public accountability as a business leader. Two paths moving in parallel, not competing, not colliding, supporting without performing. And that's what made it powerful. No official statement ever came about the ring. No romantic reveal video. No magazine spread. But in a year defined by numbers, contracts, and market confidence, that small unspoken symbol carried more weight than any confirmation ever could. Because sometimes the biggest shock isn't what's revealed. It's what's protected. As the months rolled forward, one thing became impossible to ignore. Nothing about FAYEYOKO in 2026 was accidental. The IPO roadshow began quietly, far from flashing cameras. While headlines focused on market numbers and valuation forecasts, those close to Fabulous Entertainment noticed something else. Faye wasn't selling hype. She was selling restraint. Every presentation emphasized sustainability, long-term IP ownership, and creator protection. In an industry addicted to fast wins, that alone made investors lean in. And then came the first unexpected reaction. A major overseas fund reportedly asked a question not about profit, but about stability. Specifically, whether leadership distractions could affect growth. The answer was simple and devastatingly effective. Faye had already structured the company so that no single personal event, good or bad, could shake it. Governance boards were in place. Creative heads had autonomy. Control was shared, not centralized. In other words, whatever was happening in her private life had been accounted for long before anyone noticed the ring. That detail mattered. Because while Faye was proving she could scale without spectacle, Yoko was quietly redefining what absence looked like. She wasn't retreating, she was repositioning. Insiders began to whisper that she had turned down multiple high-profile offers, choosing instead to wait. Not because she lacked options, but because timing had become her greatest leverage. Fans started connecting dots again. Old interviews resurfaced where Yoko spoke about choosing the moment when silence becomes power. At the time, it sounded poetic. In 2026, it sounded strategic. Then came the leak that didn't go viral, but should have. A single still image from a closed-door industry event surfaced online for less than an hour before disappearing. No faces clearly shown. No labels. Just two silhouettes seated side by side, hands resting close but not touching. No ring visible. No gesture. Yet the posture said everything. Calm. Grounded. Unperformative. That image changed the tone of the conversation completely. People stopped hunting for proof. They started reading intention. By the third quarter, Fabulous Entertainment's IPO momentum reached a turning point. Analysts began calling it one of the most emotionally insulated launches of the decade. No scandals attached. No messy narratives. Just clean growth and quiet confidence. Faye didn't do victory laps. She didn't celebrate online. Her only public comment was a short line in an interview. I built this so it could stand, even when I step away. That sentence hit harder than any love confession. Because stepping away implied something else, choice. Around the same time, Yoko's name appeared in an unexpected place, a pre-production credit list for a project no one had heard of yet. No genre revealed. No cast announced. Just her name, listed not as talent, but as creative consultant. The shift was subtle, but profound. This wasn't a return. It was an evolution. And suddenly, the ring made sense in a different way. Not as a promise of forever made loudly, but as a marker of alignment, two people reaching a stage where they no longer needed validation to move forward together or apart. As 2026 approached its final stretch, fans realized something unsettling and beautiful at the same time. They were watching a love story that refused to be consumed. No monetized confession. No crisis-driven exposure. Just parallel growth, protected space, and decisions made off-camera. The stock market would remember Faye's numbers. The industry would remember Yoko's restraint. But the fans, the ones who stayed long enough, would remember the lesson. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it simply builds, files the paperwork, chooses silence, and lets the world catch up later. And by the time it did, FAYEYOKO wasn't a rumor anymore. By the time the year slipped into its final quarter, the noise around FAYEYOKO had changed completely. There were fewer theories, fewer frantic fan edits chasing clues. What replaced them was something rarer in celebrity culture: patience. People sensed that whatever was unfolding was intentional, and intention demanded waiting. Behind closed doors, Fabulous Entertainment finalized its post-IPO structure. What surprised industry watchers wasn't the profit margin, it was the absence of chaos. No sudden reshuffles. No executive exits. Faye remained visible but not dominant, appearing only when decisions required her presence. She let others speak for the company, a quiet demonstration that leadership didn't need constant performance. That restraint echoed elsewhere. Yoko, who had remained almost ghost-like for months, reappeared not on a red carpet but in a private roundtable discussion leaked through a trade publication. The article didn't quote her directly. It described her instead: composed, deliberate, unhurried. Someone who listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, people stopped interrupting. The piece ended with a single line that lingered long after readers closed the page. She seems less interested in being seen and more interested in being remembered. That line spread faster than any rumor ever had. Then came December. The kind of December that doesn't explode, but settles. At a charity gala attended by financiers, creatives, and cultural leaders, Faye arrived alone. No announcement. No explanation. Cameras clicked, but there was no drama to feed on. She wore nothing that hinted at romance or secrecy, just a presence that felt grounded, almost serene. When asked about the year, she answered calmly, saying it had taught her the value of building things that didn't depend on attention to survive. The same night, across the city, Yoko attended a closed screening. No press, no fanfare. Yet by morning, word had spread that her project wasn't just a comeback, it was a recalibration. The people who saw it didn't describe plot or genre. They described atmosphere, control, maturity, a sense that the person behind the work had finally arrived at herself. Still, there was no public connection drawn between them. And that was the point. As the final weeks of 2026 ticked away, one last detail surfaced: not a leak, not a photo, not a scandal, a legal filing, buried in plain sight. A small clause noting a shared foundation contribution between Fabulous Entertainment and a private creative trust. No names attached publicly. Just numbers, dates, and purpose: arts education, long-term mentorship, quiet impact. Those who knew, knew. Those who didn't, felt something had shifted anyway. On the last day of the year, as countdowns flooded social media, neither Faye nor Yoko posted anything dramatic. No reflections. No gratitude threads. No promises for the future. Just silence. Not absence, silence chosen. And that silence said more than any reveal ever could. Because by then, it was clear this was never about proving love, nor hiding it. It was about protecting growth. About understanding that some bonds don't need witnesses to be real, and some futures don't need announcements to begin. When people look back on FAYEYOKO's 2026, they won't remember a single shocking moment. They'll remember the slow realization, the way power was built quietly, the way affection matured into alignment, the way two lives moved forward without asking permission from the spotlight. And maybe that's why it lingered. Because in a year obsessed with exposure, FAYEYOKO chose something far more dangerous and far more rare. They chose control.